Now, so far, it might seem like we've not actually accomplished much at all with Webpack. Yeah, we've installed it and we've created a Webpack config file, but at the minute when we run Webpack, all it's doing is taking our source code and it's spitting it out into bundle.js and it's minimizing it. So Webpack can do so much more than this, and one of the better things it can do is allow us to use ES6 modules. Now, a module is basically a chunk of code that we can export from one JavaScript file and then import it into another JavaScript file. Now, we can't currently do this without a module bundler like Webpack. So let's have a look at this in action. So we already have a single index.js file over here. I'm going to delete this stuff that we have. And we want to now create another file called dom.js. And the idea is that this file right here is going to be responsible for interacting with the DOM. So what I'm going to do first is say console.log and then DOM file. So we know when this runs, it's coming from this DOM file. Okay, now after that, I'm going to do a few things in this file. First of all, I'm going to say const body is equal to documents.query selector, and we want the body tag. And all that's going to do is grab this file over here. So the body tag right there. So we have that stored in a reference now. And then I'm going to create a function called style body. Set this equal to an arrow function. And over here inside, all we're going to do is take the body reference, which we have. Then we're going to access the style property. And we're going to set the background style of that body to peach puff, which is like a peachy color. Okay, so that's that function defined. I'm also going to create another function. So const, we'll call this one add title, set it equal to an arrow function. This time we'll take in some text as a parameter. And inside this function, all we're going to do is say const title is equal to documents.create element. So we've seen this method before to create an element. We're going to create an h1 tag. Then we're going to say title.text content, so we can set the text content of that title we just created, and we'll set it equal to text, which is what we take in as a parameter. Finally, we want to say body, which is the reference to the body tag. Then we want to append a child, so we say append child, and we append the title we just created, which has this text inside it. So we've seen all of this kind of stuff before, basic DOM manipulation, and we have two different functions inside this file now. Now what I'm going to do is just call these functions. Down here, I'm going to say style body, and then below that, I'm going to say add title. We need to pass in an argument here, which is going to be the text. We'll just say hello world from the DOM file. Okay, so now if I save this, what I'm going to do is come to index.js, and I want to import this DOM file into the index. So the way I can do that is simply by saying at the top import and then the file that I want to import in a string. So it's in the current directory, so /, then the name of the file dom.js. But when we use this import system, we don't need to specify that this is a JavaScript file. Webpack is clever enough to figure that out. So I'm going to just do that, and then what I'm going to do is come down here below and I'm going to say console.log, and I'm going to log index file. So over here we have a console log saying DOM file, so we know where that is, and then we have index file. So now if I save this, what we need to do first of all is run Webpack. So I can say npm run Webpack to do that. And once this is done, it's going to spit out all the code inside this file. Now, what do you think is going to happen? Well, let's now go to a browser. So let me go over here and let me try and refresh over here. I think we'll have to restart the server. So let me go to index.js, right click and go to open with live server. So we should see that over here. And now we can see the title, which is output from this file over here when we call add title. And we can also see the background is that peach color that we set over here when we call this function. So this is all working, and if I right click and inspect, we can see in the console DOM file, then index file. These were the console logs. So what's happening? Well, when we say import a file, it's going and getting that file and it's going to run it first. So that's why we see DOM file first over here. Then when it's run this file, it's going to go back to where we imported it and carry on with the rest of this file. And that's all this does at the minute. Now then, what if inside this file I wanted to use one of these functions, like add title or style body? Well, at the minute, that is not going to work, and I'll demonstrate that. If I try to now down here say add title and then pass something in, just say like test or something, then if I save this and run over here, we don't see that. But first of all, my mistake, we have to say npm run webpack to update this. Then if we go over here and refresh, we can see add title is not defined. So we're trying to do this, but it's saying add title is not defined. So when we use modules to import a file like this, it runs the code inside that file, but it doesn't automatically share any variables or functions with the file that imports it. So I couldn't automatically access any of the variables or functions that I define inside this DOM file. And that's because when we're using modules, each file has its own unique scope. So in order for this to work, we have to manually export functions that we want to use inside index from this file. So how do we do that? Well, we can do that by putting an export keyword in front of the things we want to export. So I could do that with these two things. Now, if I save it, if I come over here, we have to explicitly import those things from this file as well. So the way we do that is by saying curly braces, and then in here, the names of the things that we want to import. Now they must match the names of the things we export over here. So I'm going to copy that and paste that first of all. Then we also want add title, which is the name of the other thing that we export over here. So now we're importing these two things and we say from the DOM. So when we're importing particular functions or variables from a file that we export, we say import, then curly braces, the things we want to import from whatever the file is. That's the way we do it. So now if I run this, I'm going to save it and run webpack again, npm run webpack. Then I'm going to come over here and we can see now we get the second one, test, when we call it from here. And we can do that now because we've explicitly imported that function from this file. So that's nice. Now what I'm also going to do is delete where we call these functions down here and just call them from index.js. So now I'm going to do this test and I'll also say style body like this. We don't pass in any arguments here. Save it and we need to run webpack again, npm run webpack. Then we come over here and it still works. So we're still outputting this test and still coloring the background peach, but this time we're calling those functions from here and not inside dom.js. Now we can export more than just functions from a file. We can export any kind of data like arrays, objects, strings, classes, etc. So let's now try exporting a string. So I'm going to come down here and say export, and then I'm going to create a const called contact, which is going to be a string. We'll set that equal to mario@thenetninja.co.uk. So now we're exporting this string. If I save that, come back to index, I'm going to also import this. So the variable name is contact, and then I'm going to console.log contact down here. Oops, these need to be in parentheses, contact, and save this. Then we need to run npm webpack. And then once that's done, we can come over here. We can see this is logged to the console. So now we're importing a string as well as these other things. Okay, so just one more thing. At the minute when we're exporting things, we're exporting everything as we define them. Now sometimes it's easier just to define your functions and variables and other things as normal like this, and then just export everything in one big go at the bottom. Now the way we do that is by saying export at the bottom, then we're doing an object, and we're just going to list the things that we want to export. So style body, add title, and also contact. So this is now exporting all of these things in exactly the same way as before, same behavior as if we put export in front of each one of these things. It's exporting each one at the bottom now. So now I'm just going to import them exactly the same way over here. We don't need to change that, and this is still going to work. So let me say npm run webpack, and then come over here. Let's do a refresh, and we can see everything still works the same. So this is just an alternative way of exporting things. You can use whichever way that you wish, but now we know the basics of using modules. Let's take it one step further and look at default exports in the next video.